result of the first fundamental welfare theorem. So this is a situation where I'm going to say, using deductive reasoning, we built a model that incorporates some assumptions that we have really quite strong reasons to believe are valid. We've seen a lot of evidence that people have reference-dependent preferences over durable goods. And though I haven't shown you nearly as much evidence as there is, there's a lot of evidence that people fail to predict changes in state-dependent preferences. So what we've done is we said, OK, let's take that seriously. Let's build a simple model, see what it predicts in terms of people's willingness to pay and willingness to accept. Let's take that seriously, aggregate it to the market level, and we will say something that we think might be true about the real world. OK, so first let's do this. Which market participants do we think are likely to be projection bias reference-dependent, which I'm calling PDRD? OK, so we know from John List that there's reason to think that individual consumers who use the good for their own consumption are likely to have reference dependence, and we're going to say we're probably most likely to be the ones. Actually, let me say, I don't necessarily want to assume that they're the ones most likely to have projection bias, but if you don't have reference dependent preference, it's not going to matter whether or not you have projection bias because there'll be no change in your preferences, right? So if there's no state change, it doesn't matter whether or not you're projection biased. So we're going to say firms and other professional traders are likely to not have reference dependence or projection bias, but again, I don't actually have to make the second assumption because if they don't have reference dependent preferences, it doesn't matter if they have projection bias because there's nothing for them to be projection biased over if there's no state change. Okay. So let's look at three different cases. Case one, where only buyers have projection bias. So this is your typical durable goods, cars, electronics, phones, okay, other shiny objects. This is the iPhone market, where we can be fairly confident that the executives at Apple and the board of directors and all the other important stakeholders do not have reference-dependent preferences over the quarterly profits of the firm. If they did, they probably wouldn't be working at such a successful firm. So what's going on here is this. Okay, here's a demand curve based on sort of what should be the person's willingness to pay. If they had alpha of 0, no projection bias that we solved for in the very first slide. But here's that bump, right, that's caused by the fact that they think they're going to get the shiny object bonus every period from now on. And we don't know how much higher it is, but we're going to say, it's somewhere above the rational demand curve. And then the supply curve, I've written S rational equals S projection, but in some sense what I mean is there is no S projection because there's no sort of non-standard effect going on the supply side of this market. And so what do you get? I mean, this is just straight back to Econ 1, right? Here's the what would be the efficient, sorry, I've forgotten your name. Josh, this is Josh's preferred spot where we have a bunch of consumer surplus and a bunch of producer surplus. And if we were anywhere other than that, we'd be getting less. And so in fact, where we are is here, and we are indeed getting less. Right? Because what we're getting at this point is we're getting all of this lovely stuff that we got before. But then check this out. For these units here, this is overproduction. And the reason it's overproduction is because this is a range of units for which the marginal cost to society is greater than the actual marginal benefit to society. And so that's dead weight loss. Okay? Totally standard market analysis. And all we've added to it is the idea that people think they're getting more value out of the goods than they actually are. No? How old were you when someone said that to you for the first time? How old were you when someone said that to you for the first time? Economic models tell us that people's willingness to pay for something represents their true value for it under certain conditions. Economists and others in our society then reiterate that message without specifying the conditions under which it is true. Over and over and over again. People's willingness to pay should be taken at face value because it represents what they consider to be the value of the thing that they're buying. If next week they regret their decision, then I would just say on completely abstract philosophical grounds, we already have reason to question the statement. Okay? And what we've done here is to use precisely the rigorous tools of microeconomic modeling, but put in slightly different assumptions. Okay? We're using exactly the same rigorous methodology of mathematically stating exactly what our assumptions are, but we've taken a slightly different approach, which is that we've chosen our assumptions on the basis of mountains of psychological evidence. And when you put those assumptions into this model, what you get is that, in fact, people aren't maximizing their own preferences. Right? The buyer's actual preferences are represented by the buyer's actual utility from buying is represented by, in our model, that sum. That's not what I think they should value the phone at. That's what they are actually going to get out of it. Okay, so I'm not imposing any of my own values on this person. This is exactly their actual preferences, which, if I worked at it hard enough, I believe I could go and observe. Okay, what I actually observe, as a sort of off-the-shelf economist, is that the fact that under a different set of assumptions, the sort of standard rational assumptions, that number would be equal to that number, doesn't tell us anything about whether or not that number actually represents the value the individual gets out of the good. It only tells us that if the conditions of the rational model hold, that's the value of the good. One of the things that's really challenging in behavioral economics is to sort of unpack the messaging that has gone on in our society, where some of these extremely simple, extremely elegant, and extremely powerful conclusions from the standard model have become not just accepted as, yes, I believe that this model is valid, but this is just what I somehow deeply believe. I deeply believe that if someone says they're willing to pay $400 for an iPhone, or more, that I should get out of the way and let them spend whatever money they want to spend on it. Now, I don't claim that because I've got a model that says that number might be wrong, that therefore I'm entitled to go and monkey with the market for iPhones. That's a larger question. That's a public policy question. Okay? Because the harm done might be far greater than the benefit gained. But there are markets, and I hope that we'll talk about this a little bit next week. There are markets where many societies, many sort of quote-unquote enlightened industrialized democracies, do choose to intervene to protect people from their projection bias. And one of them is the marriage market. There are places where you have to state your intention to get married some period of days before you actually get the certificate. Okay? So that you don't get married in a hot state, as people like to say. Okay? And there are laws. I think Germany did this for a while. I think they then rescinded these laws where firms had to give you the option to sell the iPhone back for the same price. They couldn't make sales for durable goods binding. right? So there are policies that we can imagine that would, without seriously monkeying with markets, create ways for people to cause themselves less harm with respect to some of these biases. So we'll talk about that more next week. We could teach a whole semester class, one day I hope to, in how public policy could be tweaked so that we don't suffer quite as much of this harm, but without causing a lot of other mess. Right? You wouldn't want to go in and impose price controls on iPhones, right? We know that would be madness. So enough said about that. Okay, so there's this. In this model that I cranked up, which I happen to believe in, we have a situation where there's deadweight loss. Society is actually losing value because they're producing more shiny objects than people are actually getting positive value from. And also the price is too high, right? Which means that there's a transfer from consumers to firms. My personal little pet peeve on this is that I think it could conceivably contribute to the exacerbation of environmental problems from overconsumption. But it could also explain part of the Easterlin paradox. Why is it that happiness has not gone up with income? Part of that could be, if people are spending their increased income on things that don't actually bring them the satisfaction they think they're going to get, then we should not be surprised that the increase in income is not making them happier. And happiness research seems to have converged recently on the idea that spending money on experiences is actually has a much bigger impact on happiness than spending money on stuff. Okay, so spending money on a successful trip. I mean, this is the problem, is that sometimes family trips can be an outrage. But spending money on a nice trip, probably it seems like what the happiness research is starting to sort of when I say converge, I mean that the consensus opinion seems to be emerging that has a larger impact on happiness than spending money on stuff, on durable goods. And this could be part of why that is, and that could potentially explain part of the Easterlin paradox. It's not that income doesn't make you happier; it's that we're spending our income in ways that don't actually work very well. This is purely conjecture. Purely conjecture. Okay, let's look at a couple of other cases just briefly. What if buyers and sellers both have projection bias? Okay. So, for example, residential housing markets, where both sides of the market are consumers who get use value out of the durable good. Now, what we've got here is, once again, the demand curve, the projection bias demand curve is a little higher than the actual marginal benefit to the consumer. And then I've got a supply curve. This is sellers, and I've got their projection biased, sort of observationally, behaviorally observed supply curve is inflated by more. Why have I got that being inflated by more than the demand curve? Because of loss aversion, right? Okay. So what do we have? This is where Josh would like us to be, and this is where we actually wind up. Okay. So there's under trading, and so there's going to be some deadweight loss from that, which is those are units that don't get traded for which the actual benefit was greater than the actual cost, and so that is the deadweight loss from under trading. And then the price is too high, and so this again is a transfer from buyers to sellers, which we might care about or not. Again, just sort of conjectures on if that's the case, what impact might it be having? Could it be exacerbating problems in the housing market because people don't want to sell for reasons that have absolutely nothing to do with the housing crisis? They're just reluctant to trade. It could be slowing down the clearing of that market. And the other thing is, I don't know how many of you know this, but one of the biggest tax deductions in the American federal income tax code is the home interest tax deduction, right, which massively biases the market, massive subsidy for home ownership versus renting. And it's arguable, particularly now that the housing market has collapsed, that in the absence of that tax subsidy, it actually would be much better financially for most Americans to rent than to own. Which is all very well if you have other reasons why you want people to own, because you think that they make better citizens if they have more investment in their home, they're more likely to keep up the neighborhood, blah, 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 et cetera. They learn how to save, blah, 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 which is all very well. But it's possible that that tax deduction, that tax expenditure policy, is actually subsidizing what is an inefficient market, and that would inflate the inefficiency of the market. So these are the kinds of things that the public finance economists could perhaps take into consideration. Any questions about any of that? Okay, only sellers have projection bias. So the example of this is I think, trivial, although it happens to drive a very lucrative market for eBay. So the example here is the owner of an antique selling to a professional auction house, but you could also think of this as just people selling their stuff on eBay. Actually, I guess people selling their stuff on eBay would look more like that. And so here we just have the inflated supply curve, and so we have people not being willing to sell as much. There's deadweight loss there. The price is too high, and this is for my money, this is a relatively trivial case economically. Okay, now I realize that I'm dancing rather arrogantly back and forth across the line between my role as an academic and my role as a highly opinionated member of the body politic. So I apologize for that. I try very hard to stick with what I believe to be actually true, not what I happen to believe. But let me just take a few more steps in that dance. Here's a potential reinterpretation of the model. Okay, we always like to take a model that we developed in one situation and see if we can reframe it to get us some insight in another situation. What if we reframe having a durable good as having a higher income, right? Something that I could get now and in the future. And what if we think of spending or receiving money as working hard to increase income, right? It's working hard is what I give up in order to get a higher income. And what if we think of then the buying price? We would reframe that as willingness to work hard for an increase in income, and the selling price we would reframe as the willingness to work hard to avoid a decrease in income. Okay. And then what this model says is the person would be willing to work too hard to increase income, right? Because they think because it's always nice when your salary goes up. I don't know those of you who have some work experience, getting a raise is really, really pleasant. But it really doesn't last long because you really do spend that money on stuff that goes away. And so this really does, I think, potentially for a lot of us, really fit the model of reference dependence with adaptation. So you might find that people are willing to work too hard to increase income and even harder to avoid a decrease in income. Okay, so you can imagine that this would be another sort of just a more generalized version of my story about the Easterlin paradox. But not just that we're spending too much of our increased income on stuff. One of the other things that has happened over the decades and centuries is that our budget of time has gone up. Right? There are all these modern conveniences that give us more potential time in our day. And then there's the question of how are we allocating that time? Are we allocating that time to income, which we then are going to misallocate to stuff, as opposed to leisure, where we could be working a little bit less, getting just enough money to take the family to Peru, and having a fabulous life? Okay? As opposed to always thinking that the right way to benefit is to get that higher income so we can buy more stuff, and then potentially discovering that, hey, actually I don't enjoy this as much as I thought, but I don't want to fall back because of loss aversion. I'm just going to keep going. And so what we wind up with is what happiness researchers refer to as a hedonic treadmill. Right? You see someone on a treadmill. Now, most people have been on treadmills enough to know that they're not getting anywhere, but some of us may spend a part of our life thinking that we are. when in reality perhaps we're not. Okay, there. I wound up solidly on the opinionated side of that line. I'm now going to rush back to the other side. All right. I was forced by circumstances to resort to a time-saving device, which is to literally just actually take the slides that I used last year, which I think I told you earlier in the year. I've been converting slides from Beamer into PowerPoint, and I just didn't have time to do this. So the last part of this lecture is my original Beamer slides. Okay, so we're going to talk about projection bias and habit formation. And this part of the lecture is going to have the annoying feature that every time I advance the slide, I'm going to lose my ink. Okay, conventional wisdom suggests that physical exercise is habit forming. Raise your hand if you very strongly believe that that is not true. Okay, and I call that a consensus. So, roughly speaking, the more you exercise, the more you want to exercise, and formally what that means is that the marginal utility of exercise is increasing in past exercise. Okay, so Tuesday I talked about the Stigler-Becker paper called De Gustibus Non Est Disputandum. This is one of the things that they developed in that paper, is this idea that your marginal utility for something, even if it doesn't make you happier, that having done it in the past makes you want it more. Okay? So we want to be somewhat careful here because I want this to be generalizable beyond just physical exercise. I think most people's experience who have gone from not having a physical exercise habit to having one experience that as a good thing, right? That it actually makes your life better. That you like now I like going to the gym, I like exercising, and I feel healthier and I feel better. And most people see that as an increase in their utility. But that's not what we actually mean by habit formation. What we mean by habit formation is that having gone to the gym a bunch in the past increases your marginal utility for going to the gym. So it might make you worse off overall, right? So if the habit isn't going to the gym, but is if the behavior isn't going to the gym, but is say smoking crystal meth, right? So you have some marginal utility for smoking crystal meth. It's fun. Okay. Over time, you smoke a bunch of crystal meth, your teeth fall out, and you're miserable, you lose your job, and overall utility has gone down. But your marginal utility for one hit of crystal meth has gone up, right? Because now you desire it more. It's like the heroin addict wanting the boop. If I gave any of you guys a dose of boop, you'd probably say, I wouldn't give you a plugged nickel for a second dose of boop, because my sense is that boop is actually not that enjoyable. But it takes away the craving for heroin, which is a big, big deal. So that's what we mean. It's not that your utility goes up, but that your marginal utility for one more hit goes up. You crave it more, you desire it more. Or because it's actually more enjoyable, right? So with physical exercise, what we think is, maybe the story is the more once I get hooked on going to the gym, I feel deeply miserable if I don't go to the gym, right? So maybe this is making me worse overall, because now I'm just hooked on the gym and I have to spend the money and waste the time going to the gym just to overcome the craving. But I think more what we think is that it actually becomes more rewarding, right? It not only makes your life better overall, but the actual experience of physical exercise becomes more rewarding. And that could be for a lot of reasons. I'm currently getting hooked on racquetball. Part of the reason why is because it's increasingly enjoyable the better you are at it, right? We can model that as habit formation. That's exactly what Stigler and Becker did. They modeled that as habit formation, okay? But it could also just be because, I actually physiologically find the experience more gratifying when I'm in better shape. You can take lots of different reasons. We're going to take all of that complicated psychology and physiology, and we're just going to cram it into one simple concept, which is that the marginal utility of exercise goes up if you've exercised more in the past. Okay? That's a form of what? That's state-dependent preferences. Okay? So the way we think of this is that as you exercise, you're building up a habit stock. Right? This is what Becker and Murphy in a follow-up paper on rational addiction developed. No, I think it's in the Stigler and Becker paper in '77. That it's like a capital accumulation model. That you build up a habit stock, and the higher your habit stock is, the higher your marginal utility for the activity is. Okay. And then, of course, what we're going to look at is whether or not you predict that change. Okay, state-dependent preferences. Consumption is, in this case, a slightly odd term. It's an activity that you engage in, either going to the gym or not. We're going to call that consuming the gym, okay, or consuming exercise, whatever you want. So consuming at time t is whether or not you go to the gym. The state variable at time t is your level of habituation, and your instantaneous utility function depends upon your consumption and your state. Okay, so let's assume that the utility of not going to the gym when you're not habituated is 0, and the utility of going to the gym when you're not habituated is less than 0. So what kind of person is this? This is someone who does not go to the gym, right? Because the utility, when they're not habituated, their utility of going to the gym is negative. This is me 6 months ago. Habit formation says that the utility of going to the gym when you have the habit is greater than 0. Now, that's not exactly right. What habit formation actually says is that the difference between the utility of going to the gym when you're habituated and the ability versus not going to the gym when you're habituated is greater than the difference between the utility of going to the gym when you're not habituated and the utility of not going to the gym. But in this model, I'm going to keep it super simple, and I'm going to say habit formation says that your utility from going to the gym, right, was less than 0 before you were habituated. Now that you're habituated, it becomes greater than 0. So this is an inaccurate statement, but it's going to capture the concept of habit formation for us, and it's a very, very, very simple model. And then again, we could sort of ask this interesting question: what about the utility of not going to the gym when you have the habit? Maybe that's starting to get really, really negative because you just become so hooked on going to the gym that you can't concentrate if you don't go to the gym every day, or your body just feels terrible. But we're going to ignore that for now, and we're just going to assume that not going to the gym gives you a utility of 0, whether you're